Welcome to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Two sports talking sports with those in the know on the Brouhaha Show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brouhaha. Dale, week before last, we tied out the Mississippi High School Activities Association season. This week, we tied out the Mississippi-Alabama All-Star game, and next week, the Bernard-Blackwell North-South All-Star game. We will get to that one next week, but what about the Miss-Al game? You played a role in that this past week, did you not, Dale?
Well, very limited role, but
don't sell yourself short now.
It was a very dominating performance by Alabama. It was really a good showing by Alabama. They did a great job.
How much goes into? Well, we talked about that last week, but as much trouble. It seems like a lot of trouble, a lot of effort goes into making that thing happen. They just don't put themselves on, do they?
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, the weather early on probably didn't attract a lot of fans to the game because, of the weather Saturday morning all around South Mississippi and Mississippi, and unfortunately for all the tornadoes up in the northern part of the country. So not many people probably ventured out, especially when some of them were traveling 3 and 4 hours to get to the ball game. But it was Alabama had they had a couple good running backs. They had a explosive offensive line that was quick and a defensive line that was very quick. They got off their blocks well. Mississippi was probably larger, but they seemed to be just a step slow against Alabama there. Now, Alabama had a great kicker. His brother kicked for the Cleveland Browns, a McPherson boy from Fort Payne, and he kicked a record 58-yard field goal, which was the record for the Mississippi Out game, but also was an M.M. Roberts Stadium record.
Wow.
And so
one for the books.
Yeah, and he also punted 4 times for a 50-yard average, and he had 2 57-yard punts. One of them landed on the 1-yard line. And so he really flipped the deal, and the Mississippi offense never could get going. They only got across midfield twice, and one of those was on the first play of the game when they onside kicked and got the ball on that side. But then
those rascals.
So then they couldn't move. So it was just a very dominating performance by Alabama.
We talked about this, I believe, last week some about the contracts and how we got it over to Mississippi. Coach Mims talked about that. And, I think this may be a contract year. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but what are the prospects of this thing being in Mississippi again next year? Are they going to go like a home and home kind of deal, or how's this going to work? Do you know?
Well, no, I don't really have the, true facts. I just assume it'll be in Alabama next year somewhere. Mm. But I really like the location of Hattiesburg, not because I'm within an hour distance from it, but, the stadium size, you want to go into a big stadium with 65,000 seats, and, even if you had 10,000 people, it would look small. So I just, I think, and plus Hattiesburg's a small enough town that they'll buy into it. They'll help sponsor it. You start going to these larger towns like, say, a Birmingham or a Huntsville, or you're not the only show in town. Saturday, that was the only show in Hattiesburg.
Well, Dale, I appreciate your coverage of that and giving us an update on what might happen. But now, listen, on Sunday, December the 5th, the CFP committee produced its final selections, and pretty much anybody that knows anything about football is familiar with that. And I know that we have a guest that you're about to introduce who served on that committee. So as bad as I want to jump into the selections, I'm going to wait to our final segment tonight. Dale, tell us who you got for us.
We have Coach Jeff Bauer. He's former University of Southern Mississippi football quarterback, and he was also an assistant coach there under Bobby Collins. And he came back and succeeded Curly Hallman in 1990 as the head football coach, and was at USM around 17 years and had quite a success record there.
Yes, he did. All I can say is, oh boy, Dale, super and timely. So let's not waste any more time getting to Coach Bauer. Let's take a break to hear from our sponsors, and we will be back with tonight's guest right after the break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel has last-minute ideas for Christmas. Case knives, Cypress porch swings, Bayou Classic cast iron cookware, Big Green eggs and accessories, Bayou Classic outdoor cookers, Carhartt apparel, Nebo LED flashlights, Makita power tools, Yeti drinkware, and so much more. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. Do you have any roof damage or missing shingles? Do you need a roof inspection to ensure your roof is functioning properly? Look no further than the roofing specialist Jackson Brothers Construction Services. We are here to service you with affordable prices, amazing customer service, and quality work you'll be proud of. Call us today at 251-295-6442.
The Jackson Brothers Construction Services. They'll do you right. You heard it here first.
Welcome to the show, Coach Jeff Bauer. How are you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing fine, Dale.
Well, thank you. Okay, so we're talking about the college football playoffs. What's your take on the college football takeoffs? Did they select the best 4 teams?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. It was pretty easy, I think, this year. Things kind of fell into place, unlike some previous years. But no, I don't think it was hard to get the top 4 right. I think they got it right, and I think they got it in the correct order.
Do you think Cincinnati, you were in a conference, in the Conference USA there for a while, so are you sympathetic to a Cincinnati in this case?
No, I'm not sympathetic to anybody, really. And it's the committee's job, the job is to pick the 4 best teams in college football, and regardless of a Power 5 or non-Power 5, it doesn't matter. I was glad to see them get in. I thought they deserved an opportunity to do that, and the committee, there's a tremendous amount of good people and knowledgeable people, a lot of integrity. They're all there for one reason, and that's to make the very best decision as to who the top 4 are.
Well, listen, you served on the committee. What years did you serve?
Oh, Lord, let's see. I've been out a couple years now, so whatever that was before, without counting back.
Yeah. Was it real difficult? Was it real difficult one of the years that you were on the committee?
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion. Probably my last year was, the most discussion, because it got down to, if I can remember correctly, 1, 2, and 3 were pretty solid on that, but 4 was either going to be Georgia or Oklahoma to get in, and Alabama had beat Georgia in the championship game, just like this year, and the tough part was picking number 4, and whether it be Georgia or Oklahoma, and a lot of discussion that went on pretty late that night, and then the next morning early, more discussion, and Oklahoma got voted in over Georgia. But it would have put, and I don't think it had anything to do with it, but if we'd have put Georgia number 4, it'd have been a rematch between Bama and Georgia.
You had to work around that, Coach. Pardon the interruption. This is Marshall. You kind of had to work around that like they did this year, I suppose. If you're going to put Alabama and Georgia in there, you certainly don't want to play them, in consecutive matches, so to speak.
But that's really, that was speculation from a lot of people. I never thought that the committee wavered, to that, that, you had to avoid a rematch. If it was a rematch, it'd have been a rematch. It could have easily happened this year also. The way things worked out. I guess Georgia ended up 3 and not 4, but it easily could have gone the other way this year also.
Well, you made a statement earlier that you said that it all kind of, in the end, was a pretty easy top 4 there selection. Don't you think the last few weeks are the playoffs? Basically, the playoffs start a little early, like with all the conference championships and some of the late season matchups. Do you think they need to expand it to 6, 8, 10, or 12 teams?
It's a good question. I see reasons for them to, and then for them not to. I think the system has worked very well. Since it was initiated years ago. I don't know how many years we're into the 14 playoff, 7, 8, something like that. But I think the system has worked good. I don't keep up with it, obviously, like I used to. There's so many things to work through from scheduling standpoint. When you schedule the bowls here and there, if you expand the playoffs. And the one thing I do think, the money's going to be a lot greater, so they're going to find a way to get it done because the money drives it. Seems like it always does.
And money always
whether
shows
or not
it.
it'll happen anytime soon, I'm not sure, but I think, from going through the ranking system and how we do it, the top 4 is normally the easiest segment to rank. Where you start getting into a lot of discussion is when you go from teams 5 through, say, 12. Since we're talking about a 12-team playoff, that gets very difficult when you start trying to, rank teams that have had occasionally one loss outside of that top 4, but 2 and 3 losses. It's not as clear cut as the top 4. So it makes it, a little bit more difficult and more time-consuming in making that decision.
I got you. Well, Coach, out of the 4 that's left, who do you think may come out on top, or is it too close to call?
Oh, it's, without – I don't know who I'd pick right now. One of the criteria that I personally, we had a lot of numbers, a lot of data to look at, tremendous amount of data, and we had the top 10, points of data that, were geared towards, those being deserving of highly ranked in comparison and doing all that. One of them I really like to consider when you look at it, everybody that's won a national championship has had a heck of a quarterback, and I think that's key. I think, you look at the Georgia-Alabama game, Bryce Young's as good as I've seen in a long time. When you got a guy there at the quarterback position, you got a chance to beat anybody. So I think Bama will be tough to beat, and I don't think there's a better coach in preparing teams week in and week out than Nick Saban.
Did you ever have the opportunity to go up against Coach Saban in a regular season game?
No, never did. Never had a chance to play against him.
Well, Coach, let's get off the playoffs for just a minute and just reflect back on your career for just a little bit. You were, of course, a Southern Mississippi football player, and then you were an assistant coach there, and then you kind of got out a little bit, and then you came back to USM as the head coach, and in between you made some stops. In all your years, who was since you were usually an offensive coach, who was the best defensive player that played against you in all those stops that you had in college?
Oh, gosh, I don't know if I could pick one.
Well, you can name a couple.
Player.
Yeah, you can name a couple, because I know you were at SMU and you were at Oklahoma State as part of those were a couple of your stops there and following your career kind of closely. Anyway, what was your most enjoyable time as an assistant coach at somewhere besides Hattiesburg?
Oh, at SMU when I was there with Bobby Collins, we really had a great staff, had some great teams, and I really enjoyed that. Those years there. Being successful, that always helps and everything, and we were. But we had an outstanding staff. That's one. Bobby Collins is a heck of a football coach. He's my mentor. I learned more from him than anybody. And, the one thing he did, he did a great job of developing really a culture within the staff, a family-type atmosphere. And, you work with those guys 12, 14 hours a day, so you better be able to get along. And we had a great culture there, our coaching staff. And, that makes it's a fun job anyway, but it makes it more rewarding when you work for a guy like that.
Coach, this is Marshall. I want to jump back over to your tenure on the playoff committee and just kind of get maybe outside of the selection process, but the experience itself and the people you work with, how much time, to start with, did it require of you to be a part of that thing? I can imagine there's a lot of trips and a lot of conversations. Does it consume you during that period of time?
Well, it doesn't consume you. I guess you could let it consume you, but it was a lot of work. I mean, obviously watching games. I'd have a couple TVs going, and then the fast, go forward and back at different games and thumb through them and things like that. We had access to all the tape the very next morning. Sunday morning at 6 a.m. I could start watching tape just like football coaches do, going in your office and watching tapes of games. And I could pull up any game in the country. So I studied a lot of tape, watched a lot of the games on TV, studied the stats. We all had responsibility of being in charge of different conferences. When over my 3 years, I was, I had responsibility for, a conference every year, and then there was a secondary conference that you had responsibility for also. So you had to, you had to do your homework on your conference responsibilities and give updates to the committee every time we met. So there was a lot. There's a lot involved. There's a lot goes into it. You read about people that go through the mock selection process, and they all just rave about how thorough it is, and just the way it's done and how it's done. And then when you put together I was on the committee with a lot of great ex-coaches, ADs, even Condoleezza Rice was on the committee my first year, and she was fun to get to know. And then we had some downtime. I know one time, my first or second year there, we always met in Dallas, but they arranged a trip to go out and to SMU campus to the Bush Library, and we ate dinner with George and Laura Bush.
Wow!
And so that was a cool deal. That's a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something like that. But it was a very, very rewarding experience. If I could do it again, it's a non-paid position, but if I could do it again, I'd love to do it. The one, there's some perks. The good thing is that they'll send Debbie, my wife, and I to the championship game every year.
That's a pretty good
perk. We're not going to go this year, but we've made some nice trips since I've been off.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, I think you've already answered this, people that might have made the biggest impact on you during your tenure there, and I think you've mentioned a couple of names. Is there anybody else that really stuck out to you that you worked closely with? You mentioned Condoleezza Rice, but, anybody else that really made an impression on you through the process?
Well, they all made an impression on me. I mean, it's, when you hear all the ADs, I was on there with Dan Radakovich. Dan was a Clemson AD, is now going to Miami, and Joe Castiglione at Oklahoma, and then I was, I got to get to know Ronnie Lott, all-pro safety.
Yes, sir.
There were just so many. Kenny Hatfield, old coach, and years, but they were all 100 4 would be.
Mm-hmm. I got one more question for you, and I noticed this year, kind of watching the process as a casual observer, a fan, and I saw where the final week they were all in the same room, the committee members watching the games together. Did y'all do that? I was thinking, man, how wild would that be? I mean, was there a lot of interaction during the process, or is everybody zeroed in on the game, talk about it later, don't talk about it now? How'd that work?
No, there was interaction during the game. That's one of the good things that we do, I think, that we did. The last week, it's a little bit of a short week. Normally, I would go in there, fly in Sunday, and then fly back afternoon Tuesday. And because we made the final decision official about noon Tuesday, that particular week we got back, leading up to the last week, the championship games, we had to be back Friday. So that's when we stayed the rest of the week. Most of us did. And that was the week we went out, or the time we went out and ate with George and Laura Bush. But, no, we all get together and get a bunch of popcorn, and they got plenty of food. You're going to gain some weight if you're on that committee, I can tell you that. They feed you well. And but we all watch games together, and when the games were over Saturday night, we met, I think, we'd meet somewhere till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and then we'd come back and we'd start grinding the next morning at 7 o'clock. And we had to have those final rankings done by noon, so we would typically go up to pretty close to that. Some years quicker than others, but it was a rewarding time just to get to be around so many good people, and some of them I knew, but I got to make so many new friends.
Well, that's great, Coach, and we really appreciate your time. We know you're
You're
busy.
welcome.
We know you're busy being retired like you are. So we do take you. So we do appreciate it. Okay, and thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. Always good to be on with you. Thank you.
I thank you as well for all you do for us, Coach, and have done for our community. We're going to take a break right now to hear from some of our sponsors, and we will be back with more of the Brouhaha right after this break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel has last-minute ideas for Christmas. Case knives, cypress porch swings, Bayou Classic cast iron cookware, Big Green eggs and accessories, Bayou Classic outdoor cookers, Carhartt apparel, Nebo LED flashlights, Makita power tools, Yeti drinkware, and so much more. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. Do you have any roof damage or missing shingles? Do you need a roof inspection to ensure your roof is functioning properly? Look no further than the roofing specialist Jackson Brothers Construction Services. We are here to service you with affordable prices, amazing customer service, and quality work you'll be proud of. Call us today at 251-295-6442.
The Jackson Brothers Construction Services. They'll do you right. You heard it here first.
Welcome back, everybody. Inside the CFP committee, up close and personal. Anything stick out to you, Dale, about Coach Bauer's comments tonight?
No, I think he gave a great case. He told us about who was in the room, and they don't have any knuckle skulls like me and you in there, do they?
Well, I tell you what, if I'd have been in there, there might have been a little brouhaha in that committee meeting, because I'm not going to challenge Jim Bauer by any long stretch of the imagination, but I call myself a casual fan. I may be more than a casual fan, but I'm not hating, on Cincinnati. But the ultimate goal, I've always understood, and we didn't get into this, but he would have told us this, that the and he did say pick the best four teams, the best four teams, and I just can't believe that Cincinnati could beat Oklahoma State, Ohio State, or teams like that. I just don't believe they could. You think? Where are you at on that?
Do you think they can go into Notre Dame and beat Notre Dame? Because they did.
Well, I don't have to worry about that one because that's solved. I'm just telling you, I don't believe they could beat Ohio State, and I don't believe they could beat Baylor. I just don't believe that in my mind. Of course, I'm not on the committee, but I don't see them. I don't see them doing that. I heard, and you talk about Notre Dame. It's funny. I heard people talking, the know-it-alls, the people that are supposed to know it all, talking this past weekend on TV, and they talked about Cincinnati's got a great thing. They beat Notre Dame. And then 4 minutes later, they're saying Notre Dame ain't played nobody.
Well, that's understandable. But if you look at Cincinnati's whole thing, and I kept up with them, especially late in the year when they kept running. They had a quarterback that was a sixth-year quarterback, and he's a very good quarterback because I saw him in the Notre Dame game. And what I'm saying to you is that when you have a quarterback, you have a chance.
I hear you.
And
I'm all about chance.
Yeah, and so when you have that chance, but what impressed me about them is the other teams they were playing, even in East Carolina or a Navy or any of those, they gave everything they had against Cincinnati. They wanted to beat Cincinnati really, really bad, not just the normal, hey, this is another opponent. It seemed like they were giving super extra effort against Cincinnati, and they survived them all.
Kind of like people do against Alabama?
Yeah.
So Cincinnati's like Alabama?
Well, to a certain extent, because Nick Saban says, it's just like that in University of Kentucky basketball.
Yeah.
Think about University of Kentucky basketball. They're just like Alabama. It's the biggest game on the schedule when you see Kentucky in basketball or you see Alabama in football.
Or Cincinnati.
Yeah. Well, but for those folks in those leagues that they play in, Cincinnati is the kingpin.
Yeah. I can't argue with that. I'll tell you what, tell me a little more about that quarterback, because I don't know that much about him other than the fact that I saw him interviewed, and I've been standing in the room. I mean, I got to give credit where credit's due. He looked like a full-grown man standing there talking to those guys. That guy's, he looks like the real deal, and obviously he is.
That's like my playing 6 years of college, I mean, he's been around a while.
Yeah, he's a full-grown man.
Yeah. I just know that he, when the game got very close at Notre Dame, he was the one that won the game for Cincinnati.
Well, like Nick Saban said, and we may have talked this in an earlier show, he was on a forum one night, and they said, they asked 5 or 6 coaches who's the most important player on the team, apart from the quarterback, and everybody was saying this and saying that, and they got to Coach Saban, and Coach Saban said the quarterback, and he said, no, you can't say the quarterback. He said, well, you can't not say the quarterback because he is the most important person on the team.
Yeah, and I like what Coach Bauer said. He said that the Alabama quarterback, Bryce Young, is a pretty good quarterback. I mean, he's pretty good. So we can't argue about him winning the Heisman Trophy for sure.
Yeah. Listen, let's talk about the matchups, okay? Round 1, we got Alabama and Cincinnati. So, what do you think? How you think that's going to
I
turn
think, of course, it's like Coach Ball said a couple of weeks ago, you can't bet against West Point and you can't bet against Alabama right now. Now, West Point got beat this year. Will Cincinnati beat Alabama? I'm not so sure, but I don't think it'll be a runaway game.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong because I'm not an expert on what goes in the odds makers out in Vegas or wherever they do this stuff, but I think they got that thing. I think it opened at like 14. So we're talking about a college football playoff matchup, 4 best teams in the country supposedly, and how could you spread it any further or farther? You could correct my English language than 14. You just couldn't hardly do that. It doesn't, you couldn't say, well, they're a 21-point underdog to Alabama. That'd be kind of a slap in the face of the committee in a way, I guess, huh? Well,
it could be, but I don't think Vegas is really concerned about the
Slapping
committee, and the committee's probably not real, they'll probably have that much for the for the betting line, but the betting line is not far off on most nights. You always comes down to a few points here and there. So, I just think it'll be a lot closer game than people think. I don't think it'll be a 40-6 romp or something like that.
Let me ask you this, and I'm not promoting betting, or anything like this. I'm just going to ask you, if you were to bet on that game, would you take Cincy in 14?
I don't really know. I mean, you just kind of threw me a curveball there. I'm not sure. I hadn't really thought about it, but it's just hard to say. I would, I don't know. I would probably do it because a lot of times I like the underdog.
Yeah.
And
bet the dog.
Yeah.
Bet the dog.
I just like the underdogs in those games. And somebody said, "Well, you need to be an SEC fan." No, I'm a football fan. Alabama's won a lot, and they may win it again. And I was telling somebody today, we're talking about maybe a possible Alabama-Georgia rematch.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, the thing about it, Alabama had nothing to lose on December the 4th.
Truth.
Well, all the pressure was on Georgia, I thought, in that SEC championship game because of their lack of ability to beat Alabama in the big game. And so I think if they ever had a rematch, which I don't think is going to happen, I think Michigan will defeat Georgia. But if they happen to get by Michigan and had to play Alabama, I think they might play them a better game than they did the first game. Not saying they'd beat them, but I just think it would be one of those games like they played a couple of years ago in the national championship game, coming down the last play of the game, or maybe even go into overtime, because I think they're both quality football teams.
An Alabama-Michigan matchup would be awesome to see. Have they ever played?
Yeah, I think they played. Tom Brady beat Alabama back in around 2000, whatever, when they played in the Orange Bowl that year. Okay. When Mike Dubose was coaching Alabama.
Oh, well, that doesn't count.
They were in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, okay. Well, listen, Dale, I really enjoy doing this with you. You're a hoot. You're a hoot and a holler and a hoop. How about that? Can you live with that?
I guess.
Well, folks, as Dandy Don used to say, turn out the lights, the party's over. So it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
Remember to follow us all week on Facebook at the Brouhaha and let us know what topics you might want to be interested in hearing about. There appear to be no ends as to who Dale can round up. Also, stay tuned for the War Eagle Football Show with Coach Hankins coming up next. But right now, it's time to go. Take us out of here, Jamie.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Dale McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.